Hi, I'm Bob Davidson. I'm the president and CEO of the Seattle Aquarium. I want to welcome you tonight to SeaChange. This is our major fundraising event of the year. And as a nonprofit organization in this crazy time, we depend upon it for our surviving until the other side of this pandemic. And before we move on, let's pause for a moment just to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people and the heritage of their stewardship over thousands of years. This will be our 8th SeaChange and the most important we've ever held. You'll hear in a few minutes from people who will tell you why it's important and share with you the stories of ocean health of Puget Sound, and of the role that we here in Seattle play in its future. So I tell you honestly that I'm used to welcoming you and all our supporters in person to events where we get dressed up or we dress in our resort casual and we have fun with each other. And we're missing that tonight. We miss you. Thank you for welcoming us into your homes by virtue of your computer screens. And just recognize that you're still in a position to make a difference for us. And your ability to do that will help carry us through this difficult time. The Seattle Aquarium is a nonprofit organization. In a normal year, it receives no public operating subsidy for its general operations. And so you, the donor, are critical to getting us through, allowing us to bring to the public the programs of the Seattle Aquarium, the education, the outreach, the free admissions for tens of thousands of people. And so you're vital. We've got some great speakers who will join us in a few minutes. And I urge you to take a moment to reflect on a piece called An Ode to Our Ocean by Amanda Gorman.
The sea sings out to its many saviors, teenagers with fists thrust into the air, climate strikes, scientists converging around their data, a child who stoops to scoop up a piece of trash. The sea sings out for its singular subjects, arching whales that wave from their waves, turtles that teeter down their shining shores, coral reefs shining brightly as cities. The sea sings out its suffering, knowing too much of waste, screeching sounds and pernicious poison, its depths bruised by atrocities in the Atlantic, misery in the Mediterranean, its tides the preservers of time past. The story of the ocean and the story of humanity are one and the same. A great river that knows no borders and notes no lines, only ripples. While they might call it the seven seas, today we sing out your true name, the one ocean. For no matter how we try to separate your waters, you are the colossus that connects us. Water makes up 70% of Earth, 70% of the human heart, and 70% of the human being. All of us, bodies of water, for we too are oceans, or at least beings bobbing in the same boat. To stand up for our ocean is to stand up for our own ship. The sea is a restless, strong collective of many pieces, so are we. The ocean can recover, so will we. Let us not divide the tides, but discover all they have to teach us. Green meadows of seagrass that survive pathogens, blue, bloody marine snails that can fight off viruses. There are more lessons to learn, still more work to be done. So we lift our faces to the sun. May the seas help us see healing and hope. May we sing out the ocean's survival and revival. Being the people of this blue planet is our most profound privilege and power. For if we be the ocean's saviors, then it is surely ours.
That poem always gives me goosebumps. I love the idea that we're all bodies of water connected through our one world ocean. Hi, I'm Jim Wharton. I'm the Director of Conservation Engagement and Learning at the Seattle Aquarium. Welcome to SeaChange. It's our most important fundraiser of the year. Now, tonight you'll be giving your donations through the Give Lively platform on the right of your screen. Every single one of your donations this evening will be matched dollar for dollar by the Seattle Aquarium's Board of Directors. Now, our first speaker this evening is my colleague, Dr. Erin Meyer, the Director of Conservation Programs and Partnerships. Now, Dr. Meyer is going to tell you a little bit about why zoos and aquariums are so important to ocean conservation. Dr. Erin, over to you.
Thanks, Jim, for that great introduction, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you this evening for SeaChange. My name is Dr. Erin Meyer, and I'm the Director of Conservation Programs and Partnerships here at the Seattle Aquarium. My title doesn't tell you a lot about what I do here, but I direct our research and field conservation and policy and advocacy work that we do, all here within the Seattle Aquarium walls, as well as out there on the water and underwater. So the ocean is facing a myriad of problems, from overfishing, marine debris and pollution, and climate change. Climate change is one of the biggest threats facing the ocean today. The ocean is warming at incredible rates. It's facing changing ocean chemistry, which is literally causing the ocean to become acidified. So the ocean is not only impacted by climate change, but it is also one of the greatest solutions to climate change. The ocean is the lungs of our planet. It's the respiratory system. It's the temperature control system. The ocean truly is the source of every other breath we take. It produces 80% of the oxygen in the air, and it also has absorbed over 90% of the excess heat that has gone into the atmosphere through greenhouse gas emissions. And not only that, but our ocean ecosystems like kelp forests, seagrass beds, to salt marshes, these ecosystems together, they sequester 4 times the carbon as our terrestrial ecosystems. So when we think about pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, we're usually thinking about planting trees on land. But if we plant our ocean trees, restore them and protect them, our kelp forests, our seagrass beds, and our mangroves, that's actually what's going to get us toward a climate resilient future even faster than planting trees on land. Aquariums are really unique conservation organizations. We have an incredible amount and an incredible diversity of tools at our fingertips. We have scientific expertise, animal welfare expertise, policy and advocacy expertise, and an incredible platform for connecting with guests through our exhibits here at the Seattle Aquarium, through our virtual engagement platforms online and through our website, but also out on the water. We have programs that we connect with people out on the local rivers, out on your local beaches, and it's that platform that takes all of that scientific expertise, all that policy advocacy work, and takes that work to the people, to our communities here in Washington, and helps to inspire every single one of you, hopefully, this evening to join us in being a marine conservationist and taking action for our ocean. So conservation is not new to the Seattle Aquarium. We have been doing conservation work since we first opened in the late 70s. And we started our conservation research program almost 30 years ago. It seems crazy that we've been doing this work for so long, and there's still so much more work for all of us to do. We have 13 existing ongoing research projects that we have been doing for decades. We have new emerging projects in field conservation that are just getting off the ground over the last couple of years. And we have this incredible work that we're now building and new partnerships that we're building, both here at home in the Salish Sea and across on the other side of the Pacific Ocean in the Coral Triangle. And it's really some of the most exciting work of my career is figuring out how to connect the communities of these two places to help us understand these big threats facing the ocean in a global context, but through a local lens and through the lens of thinking about local solutions to these problems. I can remember walking around the halls and tanks of the Seattle Aquarium. I have this very specific memory of being 4 and in the dome and plastering my face up against the window in the dome so that I could see a rockfish sitting down toward the bottom of the tank. And then I remember looking really, really closely, and if you go into the dome, you can see these tiny, tiny little critters on the edges of the dome and little tiny anemones stuck to the edge of the dome. And I always remember thinking every time I went into the dome that it was like a treasure hunt. Because if you look really, really closely, you can see these tiny elements of life that without pausing and looking closely and taking the time to just absorb what's right in front of you, you wouldn't see them. So over the last year, the Seattle Aquarium has been busy. So one of the first projects that we're getting off the ground in our new species recovery program is focused on pinto abalone. They're an endangered species of snail here in Washington State that I think is quite charismatic, even if I may or may not be the only one who feels that way. But that's not why they're important here in Washington. They're important here because they are culturally important. They're important to our local Coast Salish peoples here in Washington State. An exciting project that the Seattle Aquarium got off the ground in the last year is focused on recovering endangered zebra sharks. This is a species of shark that's native to the Indo-West Pacific, so the other side of the Pacific Ocean, and it's an animal that doesn't seem to be recovering to some of the area protections that are in place in Indonesia and elsewhere in its range. This project is intended to bring this species back from the brink of extinction. And it leans into the incredible expertise that our staff here at the aquarium have in raising animals in human care and rearing them and raising them up to release them out into the wild to recover this endangered species. And this project, it's the first ever project focused on a shark or ray species that involves captively rearing these animals for release out into the wild. It's the first time it's ever been done. And one of the reasons why that's so exciting is that, as maybe you know, sharks are among the most endangered species globally. There are so many species of sharks and rays that are endangered or critically endangered all around the world. This project is going to help provide a framework for bringing not just zebra sharks back from the brink of extinction, but multiple and as many possible sharks and ray species as we can going forward. These are the building blocks for driving the Seattle Aquarium toward our aspiration of becoming a global leader in ocean conservation. And if I can leave you with one thing tonight, it would be to join us. Lean into your inner ocean ethic, become a part of our movement toward ocean conservation for future generations. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening, and thank you for wanting to be a part of this solution with all of us, because you wouldn't be here this evening if you weren't. And now back to Jim, who's going to take you through the rest of this evening.
Thanks, Erin. Your enthusiasm for the ocean is infectious. Now I'm standing here in our Life on the Edge habitat, where visitors can get up close and personal with sea cucumbers, sea anemones, and sea urchin. Now tonight, it's kind of quiet. And to be honest, this year it's been pretty quiet as well. And that's why your donations are more important than ever. Now, the next speaker on our program is our keynote speaker, Cristina Mittermeier, the president of Only One Collective and the co-founder of Sea Legacy.
Hey, Jim, thank you so much for that warm and wonderful introduction. I am very humbled, I'm very honored, and I'm very glad to be here with you tonight. I am not only a frequent visitor of the Seattle Aquarium, I'm a big fan of the work that aquariums do to educate and to bring people closer to nature. So thank you, and thank you all for joining us tonight. The Pacific Northwest is a very special part of the world. As a girl who grew up in Mexico, I had no idea. But when I first moved to Vancouver Island, it's the first time that I heard the term Salish Sea. And now that I've been there for a few years, I have come to explore and to understand, to visit the First Nations and Indigenous communities that live along the edges of the Salish Sea. And I have become part of this incredibly vibrant community of activists, of conservationists, of naturalists, of people who love the ocean. For me, the care and passion for the natural world came at an early age. I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't feel concerned and worrisome for the creatures that we share the planet with. And I didn't know what was my path was going to be to actually contribute to make a better planet. But I started with science, and I went to school in Mexico, and we didn't have a school for marine biology, so I learned fisheries biology. I am an expert in aquaculture and industrial fishing. And as you can imagine, by my second year of university, I was so horrified by what I was learning that I didn't want to have anything to do with that path and that career when I graduated. But there was a silver lining. We had a very small library, and one of the earliest scientific papers I read was written by Dr. Sylvia Earle. And I just didn't even know that women could have a career in the marine sciences. And I thought that I was going to be, part of that scientific and academic community, but I realized something at an early age. You have to be a really good communicator if you want to be effective. And so even though I started publishing in science, I could see that people don't really speak scientific lingo. When you confront somebody with data, with charts, with graphics, most people who don't have a background in the sciences feel intimidated, and nobody wants to feel silly, so it's easy to reject. But I realized early on in my career that when you show people a photograph, we all have these amazing literacy for understanding visuals. So I could see that people, when they see a photograph, feel so much more comfortable. They want to know more. They want to ask questions. They want to know what it feels like. And how do you do the work of creating images underwater? And for me, that was like a eureka moment, because I realized that that was the beginning of a conversation. And when you can have a dialogue with another human being about things that really matter, it's a lot easier to explain, it's a lot easier to find common ground, and it's a lot easier to find passion for a subject. So photography for me has been the doorway that has opened the path to reach millions of people and to start this conversation. When I was working for National Geographic with my partner, Paul Nicklin, because we were in the front lines of telling stories about oceans and what's happening out there. And we could see so clearly that our oceans are dying. And I remember a dive that we did in Puget Sound, where the water was so anoxic that the beautiful wildlife, we were with a wolf eel that was gasping for its last breath underwater. And I was so shocked. I inflated my suit, my BCD, I floated to the surface, and I was ready to give up. And it was Paul who said to me, we can no longer rest in our laurels as National Geographic photographers and do nothing else. Why don't we do more? And that's when we decided to create our own nonprofit organization, and that's how Sea Legacy was born in 2014. And I have to be really honest with you, because a lot of people hesitate, to wear that invisible superhero suit. Where do I start? How am I going to make it happen? Well, we didn't know either, but we took the first step, and the only thing that we had was our images, our stories, and the beginnings of social media. This is when Instagram was just a new thing. We started posting, we started telling the stories, we tried to be more emotional, really human, and really try to reflect what it feels like to be in the presence of a large whale, or to share, a moment with a shark or a dolphin. And surprisingly, people reacted. People started following and sharing. But in 2017, we came across a devastating scene in the Arctic. We filmed a polar bear that was starving to death. And we knew that it was going to be shocking, but we had no idea how shocking it was going to be. When we published it, it went viral. And over a period of 2 weeks, people shared, they debated, they cried, they insulted, they accused, and it went around and around the world. 2 billion people saw these visuals, these videos, and these photographs. And I understood that people were really angry because we touched an emotional chord. And then we didn't give people a way to take action. And so that was the beginning of what we're doing today, figuring out every day how to allow people to become participants in the solutions. And that's one of the things that I love about aquariums, and especially the Seattle Aquarium. It's community building, and it is giving people an opportunity to become actors in the most important act of our planet, how we're going to save it. And so I think the Seattle Aquarium is uniquely positioned to be a leader in this space, just by virtue of the fact that it's on the edge of the water. And I have spent many a glorious afternoon just looking at the exhibits in the aquarium, just getting lost in the magic of jellyfish or in the comings and goings of the sea otters, and the inspiring stories of recovery and restoration and conservation that the aquarium has been a part of. But a year and a half ago, I was reading some scientific literature, and I came upon an article, and I knew a few of the authors. They're some of my favorite ocean scientists. But it was the title of the paper that really captured my attention. It's called Rebuilding Marine Life. And the subtext was so inspiring and so achievable. It said, how to restore health and abundance to the ocean by 2050. That's a single generation. And so reading into that paper, the authors, led by Dr. Carlos Duarte from the University of Abu Dhabi, they tell us, there's 6 areas of action, 6 wedges that we need to tackle, and we need to tackle them all at the same time. We don't have the luxury of just doing one or the other, we have to do them all. And these are, we need to protect more spaces, we need to protect more species, we need to restore some of the habitats that we have degraded, like coral reefs and mangroves. We need to stop the flow of pollution, and that's not just plastics, that's everything, fertilizers, sediment, chemicals. We need to rethink how we source food from the ocean, and we need to expand the menu to include seaweed, for example, things that restore health. The most important one is we need to recast the ocean as a solution to climate change, not just as a victim. And I think that's the most interesting and inspiring one. I've added a 7th wedge of my own, and that has to do with we have to achieve ocean equality and justice. We cannot leave the poorest people on the planet behind as we achieve these other solutions. But to me, the fact that there's solutions in place and that it's so achievable is very inspiring. Because we have to remember, it was Dr. Martin Luther King that told us, he didn't start the speech by saying, I have a nightmare. He told us what the dream was. And so knowing where we're going makes it so wonderful and so achievable. So I think there's organizations that can only focus on plastics or can only focus on endangered wildlife. But then there's other organizations like aquariums, like communications groups, you and I, who can do them all. So I never imagined that I was going to become part of the Seattle Aquarium community. I am so honored and so happy to not be a guest anymore. I feel like I'm very much an ambassador for this institution and of the Salish Sea. The fact that Sylvia and Mission Blue have declared it a hope spot is really important. The Salish Sea is the home to about 8 million people. We are all people of salmon, people of orcas, we are all people of sea lion communities, and we are citizens of the Salish Sea. So I know that it is really important that we continue to share the message of this important hope spot with the world, and that we invite many more people to come and visit and see what the magic is truly about.
Cristina, before we move on tonight, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your work with Sea Legacy.
Thanks for that question, Jim. Actually, talking about Sea Legacy is one of my favorite things. And Sea Legacy has grown from being an organization of just Paul and I sitting in our basement to now being over 30 people. We have this technology platform. And the measure of success for the work that we're doing is how many other conservation organizations can we empower with our stories? How many dollars can we raise for conservation efforts around the world? And now we have this amazing new toy. We have a sailing catamaran that's going to sail around the world, telling stories and making the ocean real and present for people everywhere. So we are launching a new series called The Living Ocean. It has to do with what it's like to be a filmmaker, a photographer underwater, working with animals like starfish or jellyfish or sea turtles. And then we have a behind-the-scenes series that we're also launching that has to do more with life aboard the boat. What it's like to live on a plant-based vessel. How do you sail at night? How do you sail by the stars? The people that we meet along the way, the gaffes, the funny, the traumatic. We lost a sail last week. That was pretty traumatic. But we wanted to make it really fun. We don't want it to be preachy. We don't want people to feel guilt or anxiety. We want people to find joy in these ocean stories because we want people to fall in love with the sea. So I hope that you're all going to follow along the journey as we sail around the globe.
Cristina, your photography is so evocative, and emotion is such an important part of how we get people connected with conservation. So is that something that you intentionally cultivate in your work, or is it something that comes naturally because of your connection to the subject?
That's a really hard question because, of course, you want to create a sense of connection between the wild creatures we love the ocean and all the services it provides, and humanity. And I see myself as a membrane that is just allowing a conversation to take place between subjects and viewers. But it's not always easy. You know, it's easy to build a bridge of empathy with a beautiful creature like a sea turtle. Not so easy when you're looking at an animal that has no eyeballs, like a jellyfish. I love jellyfish. And so I had an opportunity a couple of years ago of being in a remote part of British Columbia and to see this amazing, what they call an egg yolk jellyfish go by. And I just jumped in the water with it. And once I was in the water with it, I realized just how long its tail was. And I had to kick hard to get away from its tentacles as we were both being carried really fast by the current. But I was able to take a picture that shows us the beauty of the temperate rainforest where we live, the amazing biodiversity that lives in the Salish Sea. And I love this picture because I think it encapsulates what the Salish Sea is all about. So finding the poetry in every picture and finding a sense of calm, of connectedness is not always easy. For my photography, I've spent 20 years working in remote places around the world, photographing indigenous people, from the Amazon to British Columbia to the highlands of New Guinea. And then I've spent the last 10 years learning how to be an underwater camera woman and taking pictures of animals. The culmination of my work is going to be to put those two worlds together. For the next 10, 20 years, however much I have left, I want to tell the story of humans and their relationship with the ocean. The story of the many coastal communities that are already suffering because of sea level rise, of the many heroic artisanal fishing communities that are carving a living out of the sea, the story of women who are taking to the ocean to feed their families. I want to tell all those stories from the perspective of the sea.
Well, thanks for that, Cristina. Now, I know you spend so much time in the field. You've seen the impact of climate change firsthand. So how do you stay hopeful?
That is such a good question, because there is no doubt that some days you just feel demoralized when you come across an animal that's been injured or that is dying, when you come across a reef that you thought was going to be alive and you realize that all the sharks have been taken and the reef is dying. Of course, all of those things feel so hopeless. I am the mother of 3 children. And I have to force myself to stay optimistic and to stay positive and to not give up. Because if I give up, then who's going to take the job of trying to inspire action and community growth? So I remain hopeful because every day, wherever I go, I meet hundreds, thousands of people who are just as passionate as I am, who are just as invested as I am in making sure that our children are going to have a living ocean. So if I feel a little demoralized, a little depressed, I think about all of you doing the good fight. And the other day, somebody was telling me a great story. They were saying, you know how in a choir, all the people are singing, but every once in a while, you have to take a breath and you need to stop singing. That doesn't mean that the choir stopped. Everybody else around us is still singing, so catch your breath, chin up, and let's keep going. I want to thank everybody who made this evening possible. I want to thank my fellow speakers and all the people who have participated in making tonight a reality. And I am very intrigued and very excited about what's happening with the Seattle Aquarium. I hope that we're all going to stay really engaged as the next months, the next years happen, to see where this incredible institution is going.
Well, thank you, Cristina. You've given us so much to think about tonight. Our next speaker is Dr. Sylvia Earle. Cristina is actually the recipient of the 2021 Seattle Aquarium Sylvia Earle Medal. Sylvia is such an inspiration, not only to me, but so many of my colleagues. And so please join me in welcoming Her Deepness, Dr. Sylvia Earle.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Seattle Aquarium, for being the ocean's megaphone, for being able to illuminate, to lift the surface and get people to see what many would never see. Even divers don't get to see many of the things that here they have up close and personal, to get to know individual fish and to see their faces. and to see the joy in the eyes of children who might be too young to put a face mask and a tank on their back. I mean, like the 3-year-olds and the 5-year-olds. They can come and see an octopus alive. They can see fish looking back at them. They can glimpse for themselves and begin to understand for themselves why the ocean matters. That the ocean is not just rocks and water, it's alive. And it's the living ocean. I am so glad personally to be a human being now. And if I ask sometimes, aren't you really depressed about the magnitude of the problems that are upon us? And yeah, there are a lot of reasons to be concerned. But the great good news is now we know what the problems are. Imagine if we didn't know. 100 years ago, we didn't have a clue about so much that now is vital to keeping us alive and healthy, not just now, but far into the future, to have an enduring future. We need to understand our place in nature and how the ocean really dominates the planet, because now we know. People can understand. We're in trouble. We see we've got problems. We know we have the power of choice. We can do things that will take us into an enduring future. That is what keeps me optimistic. That's why I'm driven to work with Mission Blue, to work with you, to work with anybody I can find, to say we must protect the ocean as if our lives depend on it, because they do. The ocean would not be able to be the system that generates oxygen and captures carbon and drives the way the world works. Rocks and water alone don't make a living planet. Life makes a living planet. That's what makes Earth the blue planet, not the gray or brown one. It's what keeps us alive. So it's respect for the life and understanding that we have almost an obligation to our own species to take care of life on the land and in the sea, because they keep us alive. Now we have to return the favor. Some places that are recognized as hope spots are not in great condition. San Francisco Bay is a hope spot. The reason that it is designated as a hope spot is because with care, it can go from where it is to get to a better place. There are other places, Galapagos Islands. It's in pretty good shape, but with care, it can be in better shape. The Salish Sea is in great shape, generally speaking. It, too, with care, can really not only safeguard what remains now in good condition, but be like an insurance policy for the future, getting people to say, we are going to look out for the health of the Salish Sea. We're going to do our part to make sure that it doesn't degrade. Our goal is to really amp up protection, to really, if anything, make it better than it currently is. And it's already just such a magnificent place. That connection with the Seattle Aquarium is really meaningful, showing people what's out there, what's down there, and do what they can individually and together to make a difference. The convening power, the communication power of the Seattle Aquarium is magic. We need a little magic right now, coupled with common sense and rules, regulations, and all the evidence and other stuff, but mainly, I like Seattle Aquarium's magic too. So thank you, Seattle Aquarium, and all the fish and other creatures who are there, for having me as a part of the action. I understand that this aquarium is expanding, and I can't wait to see what the future is going to be and the impact that you will continue to have really inspiring hope. Hope for the ocean, hope for humans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sylvia Earle. I am always inspired every time I hear you speak. I want to remind everybody that we are all connected through this one world ocean, and we are all part of the solution. And so if there's 3 things I can leave you with tonight, I want to remind you to choose sustainable seafood. Sustainable seafood and sustainable fisheries are among the most important tools that we have in our toolbox to save the ocean. Second, I'd love for you to just start a conversation with someone in your community to remind them and share with them why you value the ocean. Too often the ocean is out of sight and out of mind, and we need to bring the ocean into our circle of concern. And finally, I want to remind you one more time, and you know what? Diver Katie has something to remind you about tonight. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for SeaChange. Until next time, I'm Jim Wharton. Have a great evening.